There is a certain kind of older man women often claim they want: confident, independent, and never desperate for attention. He is the kind of man they talk about admiring, share quotes about online, and insist he is their ideal partner. Yet when a man like that actually enters their life and truly doesn't rely on their validation, the reaction is often very different. Instead of instantly falling for him, they become frustrated. They describe him as cold or hard to understand. Something about him feels unusual because he doesn't behave like most men they've dealt with before. And that mystery keeps pulling them back in, not necessarily because they want a relationship with him, but because they can't understand why he doesn't respond emotionally the way other men usually do. By the end of this video, you will understand exactly why. And once you see it, you can never unsee it. 1. Why older men stop chasing women. There is a reality no one talks about openly. Many men spend their younger years constantly overextending themselves in relationships. They are always the first to text, always adjusting their schedules to fit someone else's availability, offering compliments too quickly, and reshaping their mood and behavior around a woman's reactions. Over time, many realize this approach rarely creates genuine security or balance. Even when it seems successful on the surface, it often produces a one-sided dynamic where one person gives endlessly while feeling increasingly dependent on validation and attention. Older men often come to this realization after years of emotionally draining experiences. They have invested heavily in relationships, made themselves endlessly accessible, and eventually noticed how easily that effort could become expected rather than appreciated. By their late 30s or 40s, many begin to change. Instead of constantly trying to prove interest, they focus on simply living their lives. They build strong friendships, invest deeply in work or passions they care about, and develop a sense of self-worth that no longer relies on romantic validation. So when they meet a woman they genuinely like, their interest feels calmer and more grounded. They appreciate the connection, but they don't approach it with desperation or fear of losing it. And for women accustomed to receiving non-stop attention from men, that kind of energy can feel unfamiliar and difficult to interpret. 2. The problem with constant availability. Part of this dynamic comes down to how people perceive value. Many men instinctively offer attention immediately when they meet a woman they find attractive. They text first, clear their schedules, shower her with compliments, and make her the center of their focus almost instantly. The issue is that countless other men are behaving the exact same way. When something becomes extremely common, it loses its emotional value. If attention is constantly available from every direction, people stop viewing it as special and begin treating it as normal. Older men who've experienced this pattern tend to understand that attention given too freely often becomes expected instead of appreciated. As a result, they stop offering unlimited availability by default. This usually isn't about manipulation or emotional games. More often, it's because they've built lives filled with priorities, responsibilities, and interests that genuinely matter to them. Their time and attention naturally become more selective. That creates a kind of authentic scarcity, not something forced, but a byproduct of having a full life, and that difference can significantly change how others perceive them. 3. The broken heater effect. Psychologically, people become conditioned to what they repeatedly experience. A woman who has consistently received unsolicited attention for years may never consciously think, "Men are supposed to chase me." Instead, it simply becomes the normal background expectation of dating. So when she meets a man who is interested but doesn't behave in the usual overly eager way, the experience can feel confusing. It's similar to living in a house where the heat automatically turns on every winter. You don't think about it because it's always been there. But if one winter it suddenly doesn't come on, you don't assume the system is experimenting, you assume something is wrong. In the same way, when a self-contained older man doesn't provide the expected constant pursuit, the initial reaction may not be attraction. It may feel like tension or irritation. She might interpret his behavior as arrogance, emotional distance, or lack of seriousness. But often those explanations are attempts to make sense of a deeper discomfort, the realization that an expectation she didn't even know she had is no longer being met. 4. The mystery she feels compelled to understand. This is where the dynamic becomes more complicated. Instead of pushing her away, the uncertainty starts pulling her in mentally. Not necessarily in a romantic way at first, but in a psychological one. He becomes someone she feels driven to figure out. She begins analyzing small interactions for meaning. He replied quickly this time, maybe he's more interested than he seems. He joked around with me today, maybe he's opening up. He held eye contact a little longer than usual, and now I can't stop thinking about it. The fascination isn't really about his actions themselves. It comes from the fact that he never delivered the clear, predictable reassurance she expected. That missing signal becomes louder than any obvious display of affection could have been. A distinction most people overlook is the difference between a man who is emotionally unavailable and a man who simply doesn't constantly advertise his availability. One man is truly disconnected and hides behind emotional distance because there's little substance behind it. The other is emotionally present but doesn't feel the need to repeatedly prove it or offer validation on demand. At first glance, both can appear similar, especially in a culture where men are expected to constantly pursue and reassure. But over time, the outcomes become completely different. Eventually, the emotionally unavailable man reveals that there's nothing beyond the wall he created. The grounded older man, however, gradually reveals consistency, presence, and authenticity. His sincerity becomes harder and harder to dismiss. 5. The test every man fails. Even men who understand these dynamics often fail at one critical moment. Eventually, she becomes slightly distant. Maybe she replies less, grows colder for a few days, becomes mildly critical, or makes comments that seem designed to provoke a reaction. Most men immediately feel the urge to close the distance. They reach out, over-explain, check in repeatedly, or rush to repair tension before they even understand whether anything is truly wrong. The discomfort of uncertainty becomes too difficult for them to tolerate. The older man feels that same discomfort, but he handles it differently. He doesn't panic. He doesn't invent excuses to reconnect or scramble to regain control of the interaction. He doesn't apologize for having his own life or abandon his priorities to ease temporary tension. Instead, he continues living normally. And often, that calm consistency changes everything. Without pressure or pursuit, she eventually reconnects on her own. The silence he maintained without breaking communicates something powerful: his behavior wasn't an act. He genuinely is as grounded and self-contained as he appeared to be. For many women, that level of authenticity feels rare. 6. What happens after the tension fades? Once the irritation and uncertainty settle, curiosity can evolve into genuine interest. Not the shallow interest that comes from constantly receiving attention and validation, but a deeper kind that grows from wanting to truly understand someone. As that happens, she may begin putting in more effort herself. She initiates conversations more often, becomes more thoughtful, and invests emotionally in ways she may not have before. For once, the connection no longer survives entirely on the man's effort. She has to contribute something meaningful too, and surprisingly, that level of mutual participation often feels more engaging than relationships built on non-stop pursuit. This stage also reveals an important difference between people. Women with emotional depth tend to appreciate his steadiness. What once felt confusing starts to feel solid, dependable, and worth building with. Others may increase the tension, create more conflict, or eventually leave altogether. The older man doesn't obsess over either outcome. His life already has direction and purpose. A relationship becomes something that complements it, not something that defines it. And that lack of desperation is what sets him apart. The real meaning behind it all. At the core of this idea is something simple: the older man who no longer chases isn't necessarily cold, manipulative, or trying to appear mysterious. More often, he has simply built a meaningful life before any relationship entered the picture. Because of that, his attention carries weight. It's no longer unlimited or automatic. It becomes intentional, genuine, and valuable. The frustration some women feel around him often has less to do with him personally and more to do with confronting expectations they never realized they had. He isn't following a strategy or playing psychological games. He simply stopped performing for approval. And in many ways, that quiet decision becomes the most powerful change he ever made, not because it helps him win, but because he finally learned to place his own life, identity, and purpose first. The deeper message isn't about becoming detached. It's about creating a life so grounded and fulfilling that your sense of worth no longer depends entirely on another person's attention. A man who builds that kind of life doesn't need to pretend he's independent. He genuinely is, because he already has something meaningful anchoring him long before any relationship begins.